Mm. Okay, we will finish reading it in 10 minutes. Okay. Or a sentence moving at a certain pace, down to the pace aiming to the bottom. If not the bottom of this pace, then some other pace where it can rest. Or in a long sentence, that is stated with a fragment of a sentence. A long sentence moving at a certain pace, down to the pace aiming to the bottom. If it not bottom of this pace, then some other pace where it can rest. Or I stop for a moment to think out the question raised by its own temporary existence, which ends with the page is turned and the sentence falls out of the mind that holds it temporary, temporarily in some kind of embrace, not necessarily an ardent one. Okay, that means that it has started with the idea of a sentence, a long sentence moving as a certain pace, down to the pace aiming to the bottom. If not the bottom of this pace, then some other pace where it can rest or stop for a moment to think out of the question raised by its own temporary existence, which ends when the page is turned, the sentence falls out of the mind that holds it temporarily in some kind of embrace. Eh? So the sentence, not necessarily an ardent one, but more perhaps the kind of embrace enjoyed it or endured by a wife who has just. So here সেন্টেন্স ওয়ান্ট টু এমব্রেস, এই সেন্টেন্সের এমব্রেসের ঘটনা দিয়েই এটার সাথে এই জায়গা থেকে উনি চলে গেলেন কার জায়গায়, দ্য এমব্রেস বাই আ ওয়াইফ হু হ্যাড জাস্ট ওয়েকড আপ and is on her way to the bathroom in the morning to wash her hair and is bumped into by her husband. The sentence embrace সাথে উনি তুলনা করলেন কার সাথে, যখন when a wife will get up early in the morning and want to go to the bath, at that time her husband wants to embrace him accidentally. Okay, that is the thing. Who has been lounging at the breakfast table reading the newspaper. So that husband at that time was reading in the breakfast table or taking rest, doesn't see her coming out of the bedroom, but when the bumps into her and is bumped into by her, raises his hands to embrace her lightly, transiently, because he knows that if he gives her a real embrace so early in the morning, before she has properly shaken the dreams out of her head and got her darts on, she wouldn't respond and may even become slightly angry and say something or wounding. And so the husband invites in the embrace not so much physical or emotional pleasure as he might, because he doesn't want to waste anything. With this sort of feeling, then the sentence passes through the mind of more or less, এরপরে আবার সেন্টেন্সে চলে আসলো, and there is another way of describing the situation too, which is to say that the sentence crawls through the mind like something or someone says to you. So sentence এরকম জিগজ্যাগ করে হাঁটতেছে হাঁটতেছে হাঁটতেছে, কিভাবে হাঁটতেছে, যে এরকম মানুষের মন এরকম ভাবে কাজ করে, something someone says to you while you are listening to a heart to the FM radio. So at the time when you hear the FM radio, সেই FM রেডিওতে শোনার সময় আপনার কি অনুভূতি হয়, some rock group there. So from the FM radio, rock group will be there, its thrilling sound will be there, and so with your attention or the major part of at least already rewarded. So sentence কিভাবে চলতেছে, sentence চলতেছে in a zigzag way, in the way that means you feel at the time of listening the FM radio. The radio may start the rock sound, a rock sound, sometimes you have minor attention, sometimes you hear the part of it already at this rewarding, there is no much mind. আপনি এফএম রেডিও শুনছেন যখন, তখন কোনো কোনো জায়গা আপনি পুরো শুনছেন, এটা হয়তো আপনার কেন পুরো শুনছেন না, কেন ফ্র্যাগমেন্ট শুনছেন, হয়তো এটা আপনার এয়ার ব্যান্ড না, এটা আপনার হলো প্রিয় ব্যান্ড না, হয়তো বা তার টোন ভালো লাগছে না, হয়তো বা টোনটা আপনি আগে কখনো শুনেন নাই, স্পেশালি কনসিডারিং দ্যাট ইউ হ্যাভ প্রবাবলি জাস্ট কোয়ারেলড উইথ আ পারসন, কেন আপনি এফএম রেডিওটা শুনতে পাচ্ছেন না? যে আপনি কিছুক্ষণ আগে কারোর সঙ্গে হয়তো ঝগড়া করছেন, এই জন্য আপনি শুনতে পাচ্ছেন না। দ্য মেকার অফ দ্য রিমার্ক, অথবা রেমার্কের সাথে ঝগড়া করছেন। ওভার দ্য রেডিও বিং টু লাউড, অথবা রেডিওর সাউন্ডটা অনেক বেশি উচ্চ স্বরে, সামথিং লাইক দ্যাট, অ্যান্ড দ্য ভিউ ইউ টেক and of the remark, and is that you would really rather not hear it, but if you have to hear it, you want to listen it to from the smallest possible length. হ্যাঁ, হয়তোবা আপনি এত আস্তে হচ্ছে আপনি শুনতে পাচ্ছেন না, এবং শুনতে পারলেও এটা আপনি হয়তো এত বেশি সময় ধরে শুনতে পাচ্ছেন না। হ্যাঁ, পসিবল লেন্থ অফ দ্য টাইম, অথবা যে অ্যাডভার্টিসমেন্ট হচ্ছে ডিউরিং আ কমার্শিয়াল, বিকজ দ্য immediate aspect of the commercial, they are going to play a new rock song by your favorite group, a cart, and has never been heard before, or you want to hear and is responded to in a new way, a way that escort and whatever you are feeling in a moment might feel if the threat of the new experience could be overbalanced by the possible promise of the possible positive benefits, and what is the mind con, construes as such, remembering as this of often really disgust defeat not much. So sentence কিভাবে চলতেছে? আপনি যেভাবে এফএম রেডিও শুনছেন, এফএম রেডিওর শোনার সাথেই আপনার মন কতগুলো কথা বলছে, হ্যাঁ, সবগুলোর মতো এই সেন্টেন্সটাও চলছে। Not that such defeat our not at times good for your character, teaching that it is not by success alone, and one surmounts life, but the setbacks to contribute to the roughening of the personality, that by providing a textured surface to place against that life enables you to leave slight tracks and smudges and the race of human history you mark. And after all, benefit seeking always has something of the smell of the and vanity about it, and as if you wish to decorate your own brow with the laurel and wear your medals on a cook out, when the invitation had said something about them. And although the ego is always hungry, we are told it is well to remember that ongoing success is nearly a meaningless on ongoing lack of success. So এখান থেকে আবার চলে গেল কিভাবে, অন্য জায়গায় চলে গেছে। যেমন এই 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 এফএম রেডিও থেকে চলে গেছে ফর ইউর ক্যারেক্টার, আরেকটা চরিত্রের কথা, টিচিং ইউ, যে আপনার টিচারের কথাই চলে এসেছে। সেই টিচারের কথা আপনি কিভাবে ধরছেন, কিভাবে সেই অনুযায়ী আপনি কাজ করছেন, সেটার আবার একটা ব্যাখ্যা দিয়েছে এখানে। Which can make you sick, that is good to leave a few crumbs on the table on the rest of your breaths, not to sweep into all the little braided purpose of your soul, but to allow others to part of the gratification, and to share in this way you will find the clouds are smelling you, and the postman bringing you the letters. আবার এবার আবার তারপরে টিচার যেভাবে আপনার মধ্যে যে কথাগুলো বলেছে সেগুলো আবার কিভাবে কাজ করছে, এটার সাথে আবার অন্য অ্যানালজি চলে আসছে, মেটাফর চলে আসছে। দ্য পোস্টম্যান ব্রিঙ্গিং ইউ লেটার্স, বাইসাইকেল অ্যাভেলেবল হোয়েন ইউ ওয়ান্ট টু রেন্ট দেম, হ্যাঁ, মে আদার সায়েন্স হাউএভার গার্ডেড অ্যান্ড লিমিটেড, bicycle available, you want to rent them, and many other signs, however guarded and limited, of the community's temporary কথাটা অনেকবার এখানে আছে, approval of you, at least its willingness to let you believe temporarily that it finds you not to lacking the commendable virtues, and it had previously allowed you to think, and from its scorn of your merits, as it might be put, or anyway its consistent refusal to recognize your basic humanness, and its secret black ball of the project of your remaining alive, made it executive session by its ruling bodies, which, as everyone knows, carry out conscious organism of reward and punishment under the rose, causing faint alteration of the status quo behind your back at various points along with the primacy of the community life, together with the other enterprises of the dissimilar in the tone, such as producing films that have special qualities or attributes, such as a film where the second half of its holy mystery and the girls and the women are not permitted to see it, or the writing novels in which the final chapter is a plastic bag filled with the water which you can touch or but not drink. In this way or ways, the underground mental life of the collectivity is lost and denied or turned into the something else ever imagined by the planners. who, returning from the latest seminars and in crisis management, being asked what they have learned, say they have learned how to throw their hands and sentence and the sentence meanwhile এতগুলো ঘটনার পরে আবার সেই সেন্টেন্সে চলে গেছে the sentence meanwhile although not insensible of this consideration has a festering conscience of its own and which persuades to the follow its star and to move with all deliberate speed from one place to another without losing any other rights it may have picked up just being there on the page and turning this way and that to see what is over there under that oddly shaped tree over there reflected in the rain barrel in the imagination over the rough. It is true that your young manhood we were taught that short punchy sentence were best. But what did he mean? Doesn't punchy means punch drunk? I think that probably is intended to say short punching sentences, meaning sentences that last out at you, bodying your brain if possible. And looking up the word just now, I can across the nearby পানখা which is the large fan এই পাঞ্চিং সেন্টেন্স কিরকম হবে পাঞ্চিং সেন্টেন্স এই পাঞ্চিং সেন্টেন্স বলার পরে এই পাঞ্চিং সেন্টেন্স মানে শর্ট সেন্টেন্স এখান থেকে চলে গেল উনি পানখা কি which is the large fan suspended in the ceiling of Indian subcontinent একটা বড় যে পানখা এটা দড়ি দিয়ে operated by a attendant pulling a rope that is what I want for my sentence to keep it cool. We are mature enough now to stand a shock of learning, and much of what we are taught in our youth was wrong and improperly understood by those who were teaching it, or perhaps shaded a bit, the shading resulting from the personal need of the teachers. Actually, এরপরে পানখা বললো যে পানখা যেমন বড় পানখা যেটা হচ্ছে সিলিং এর সাথে বাঁধানো থাকে একটা রশি দিয়ে টানানো হয় এই ঘরটাকে যেরকম ভাবে শান্ত করে দেয় সেই রকম তার সেন্টেন্স গুলো এখানে বলেছে তার সেন্টেন্সটাও কার হবে এই বার্থেলমে সেন্টেন্স গুলো বলেছে so we human being are temporary to the introduce of some other hearts bloods into their work and sometimes this may not have been the first water the heart's blood even if they thought they were moving the knowledge out and the board of the education had mandated. Okay, এরপরে ইয়াং বয়সে ইয়াং এজে টিচাররা যে টিচিং গুলো দিয়েছে সেই টিচিং গুলো কেন দিয়েছে সেগুলো তারা ভুলে গিয়েছে বা সেগুলো তাদের কোনো কাজে লাগেনি সেগুলো তারা হয়তো বা they have wrongly understood. Okay, কেন টিচাররা করেছে টিচার have done this for the cause of their duty and they have done it and they have done it according to the education board mandated. They would have noticed that their sentences were not having the knockdown power of the new weapons which blades tremble in ever and but it is true that we didn't have these weapons at the time and they might have taken into account the fundamental dubiousness of their project but all the intelligently conceived project have been eaten up already and like the moon and the stars leaving us in our best clothes with only things to do like the conducting vigorous words of the stinging against the wife and who have now thoroughly come awake and slipped into their stripped belts and pulled sweaters over their torsi and adamantly refuse to wear and brush under the sweaters, carefully explaining the political significance of the refusal to anyone who will listen and look and but not touch because that has nothing to do with it. And so they say, leaving us as it were with only things to do like floating sheets of Raymonds wrapped around the room, trying to find out how many we can keep in the year at the same time, with at least gives us a sense of participation as though we were Buddha. রেমন্ডের শার্টের থেকে চলে গেলেন উনি Buddha looking down at the mystery of our smile and voice needs to the investigated and I think I will do that right now while there's still enough light. If you will sit down over there and in the best chair, take off all your clothes and put your feet in the electric toy caddy which prevents pneumonia and slips into the permanent press hospital gown to cover your nakedness. Why? If you do all that, we will be ready begin after. We will be ready to begin after. We have 5 minutes. আমাদের 5 মিনিট আছে. We will be ready to begin after I wash my hands because you pick up an amazing amount of exuvia in the city just by walking around the open air and nodding to acquaintances and speaking to friends and copulating with lovers. Copulating with lovers means physical relation with emotion. That is called copulation. Copulation can be the physical relation of the animals, can be called copulation. So copulation with lovers with the ordinary course and the death of our enemies by and by, and I am getting little upward just about washing my hands because I can't find a soap which somebody has used or not put back in the soap dish. All the which are extremely irritating. If you have a beautiful patient sitting in the examination room, neck inside her gown, peering at the moles in the mirror with her immense brown eyes following your every movement when they are not watching the moles, expecting them in a Disney nature film to exfoliate, and her immense brown head wondering what you are going to be her, and the pious places in the head, letting the question leak out while the therapist decides just to wash his hands in a plain water, hank of soap, and does so. Hello. আমি ক্লাসে একটু পরে ফোন দিই 10 মিনিট. And does so, and the looks around for a towel, and all the towel have been collected from the towel services. এই একটা হসপিটালে গিয়ে সে হাত ধুবে, সে সাবান থেকে শুরু করে সে টাওয়ালে চলে গেল, সোপে চলে গেল, টাওয়াল আবার টাওয়াল ক্লিনাররা নিয়ে চলে গেছে. So many things are there. So wipes his hands on his pant in the back, so as to avoid suspicion stain on the front, thinking what must she think of me, and all these are very professional and she looking and trying to visualize the contempts from her point of view, and she has one, but how can she is not the washroom and then stopping because it is finally his own point of view that the cares about and not hers, and with the firmly in the minds and the light and confident step and such as mind find to the works on the boiler Lytton, he enters in the escape to the occupies so pretty, and taking her by the head proceeds to tear off the steep white hospital's gown, but we cannot have the kind of pornographic mark in this majestic and high-minded sentence, which will probably end up in the Library of Congress. তাহলে সেন্টেন্স শুরু হয়েছিল সেখান থেকে, এই সেন্টেন্সটা খুব সম্ভবত শেষ হবে লাইব্রেরি অফ কংগ্রেসে গিয়ে. That was the just something that took place inside the consciousness as he looked at her, and since we know the consciousness is something, she is not entirely without responsibility in the manner, so then taking her by the hands he falls into the stupendous white puree of her abyss. No, I mean rather that he asked her how long it has been since her last visit, and she says at a fortnight, and he shudders and tells her with the condition like hers in the emergency popular soldiers and the troops with her their own battles and the pretending to be the fosters the enemy discovering at least the moment, and that those trees they have eaten their lunch under have eyes and shorts, which reminds me of the performance in 1845 of the Robert Houdin called The Fantastic Orange Tree, wherein Robert Houdin borrowed a lady's handkerchief wrapped in between his hands and passed it into the center of an egg. Look here, very fantastic. Wrapped lady's handkerchief, borrowed a lady's handkerchief, wrapped it between his hands, দুই হাতের মধ্য দিয়ে ঘষলেন, and passed it into the center of an egg, একটা ডিমের সেন্টারে এটাকে পাস করে দিয়েছে. after which he passed the egg into the center of a lemon, সেই এগটাকে আবার লেমনের মধ্যে ঢেকে দেয়, whether it is possible or not. after which he passed the lemon into the center of the orange, লেমনটাকে আবার অরেঞ্জের মধ্যে দিয়ে পাঠাইছে, then pass and press the orange between hand, এবার অরেঞ্জটাকে দুই হাতের মধ্যে দিয়ে ডলতেছেন, making it smaller until only a powder remained. Oh my God. Whereupon he asked for a small potted orange tree, and sprinkle the powder there upon which the tree burst into the blossom, and the blossoms turning into the orange. Again, the blossoms turning into the orange turning into the butterflies, and the butterflies turning into the beautiful young ladies. Oh my gosh. Who then married married members of the audience, a condition of damaging to real-time social intercourse of any kind. The best thing he can do is give up, lay down her arms, and he will lie down in them, and together they will permit themselves a bit of the old slap and trickle. She, wearing only her Mr. Christopher's medal on its silver chain, and he, for such in the latitude granted the professional classes, wearing about the sentence about about its thin wires of dramatic tension, which have been omitted, about whether we should write down some natural events occurring in the sky, birds, lightning bolts, and about the possible corpse defect within the sentence, where about the chief verb would be, but at this moment the messenger rushes into the sentence, and bleeding from a hat of thorns he is wearing, and cries out, "You don't know what you are doing. Stop making this sentence." And began instead to make moholi, negi, cocktail, for those are what we really need on the frontiers of bad behavior. And then he falls to the floor, and a trap door opens under him, and he falls through that into a damp pit where a blue narwhal waits, its horn poised, but maybe weight of the messenger falling from such a height will break off the horns. Thus, considering everything very carefully in the sweet light of the ceremonial access in the run made scramble of information sickness, we must make a decision as to whether we should proceed or go back. In the latter case, enjoying and the pathos of the eradication, in which farmer is reading an erratic advertisement which begins, "How to make your mouth the blowtorch of excitement, but with the author of her text of the mouthwashes attempting during the pause, while our burned mouths are being smeared with fat, to imagine a better sentence, whether more meaningful, like those of the Declaration of the Independence, and or a blank statement showing that you have seen thousands kroner more than you thought you had, a statement summing up in an unreasonable demand." Okay, actually that is the simplicity of sentence and the ambiguity of the sentence. There he said, যদি ডিক্লারেশন অফ ইন্ডিপেন্ডেন্সের মতো একটা ক্লিয়ার জিনিস হয় তাহলে সেটা কোনো অর্থই থাকবে না, কিন্তু যদি এমবিগুয়াস হয় তাহলে অনেক বেশি মিনিং থাকবে। If you can imagine these demands, and why are they not routinely meet tall full? But of course it is not query that this infected sentence has set out to answer. Oh, and hello to our girl's friend Rosetta Stone, who has stuck by us through thick and thin. But some other query that we shall someday discover the nature of. And here comes Lord Wick, the expert on sentence construction. We have borrowed from the Bohas, so we'll go and take Ludwig, probably find a way to cure the sentences sprawl by using the improved way of thinking developed of Weimar. I am sorry to inform you that the Bohas no longer exist, but all of the great masters who formerly thought they are either dead or retired. তার মানে সেন্টেন্সের মিনিং খোঁজার জন্য যেই পারদর্শীরা, সে মারা গেছে, সে এক্সিস্ট করে না, এবং যারা আছে বেঁচে তারা রিটায়ার করেছে, তারা এখন সেই জায়গায় নাই। তার মানে এই সেন্টেন্সের মিনিং কেউ খুঁজতে পারবে। দ্যাট ইজ দ্য ambiguity. And how to pass the examination of the police sergeant, and the Ludwig falls through the Tugendhat house into the history of the man-made object, a disappointment to be sure, but it reminds us that the sentence itself is a man-made object, not the one we wanted, of course, but is still a construction of a man, a structure to be treasured for its weakness, as opposed to the strength অফ স্টোন। ওকে, তার মানে বলছি দিস আর সেন্টেন্সটা এমন কিছু না, এমন কিছু শব্দ না, এর অবশ্যই কোনো মিনিং আছে, এই মিনিংটা অবশ্যই আপনারা বুঝতে পারবেন। ওকে, ও মাই গশ, 10 minutes pass. Okay, okay, so thank you very much for attending the classes.